Chapter 10 Sonny and Zenko. After Zenko and Sonny woke up in the same bed together, keeping each other warm all night, Sonny felt much more comfortable sharing a bed if needed, knowing Zenko was cool with it. She was also a great 8 centuries old traveling companion, and comforting knowing she was giving him practice interviews for when he gets his job after graduation. But in the meantime, Sonny and Zenko and Sonny's little sister Bonnie were taking a road trip from St. Paul, Minnesota to Natalia's house, where Sonny intended to live for the time being. And while Sonny was driving on the road with nothing to see for miles, Bonnie commented, "You really like Zenko, don't you? You feel like hag-maxing?" Zenko looked annoyed and answered, "I'm not that old. I'm only between 800 and 900 years old, with 200 years left in me." I stand corrected. My brother is super hag-maxing. Sonny interjected, "I like older women." "Sure you do. Just like your 30-year-old soon-to-be sister-in-law. I think a lot of younger women my age these days are delusional, if I'm being honest. Like, really. I hear my classmates say they want a guy that's over 6 feet, six figures, and a six-pack, while all she has to do is merely exist and have things handed to her. I guess they really aren't so strong and independent as they present themselves to be." Zanko faced pawed before speaking. "Good God, don't even get me started with 1960s Kitsune Society and Sorcerer and that whole movement that lasted until the 2020s, when people just got sick of it. I heard so many young vixens scream about how they're oh so strong and independent, yet they wanted Todd to do everything for them while they themselves would just sit in front of the telly all day and not even get any housework done like a responsible adult. Like, don't even call yourself strong and independent if you can't take the least bit accountability for your own bad decisions, and don't even make an attempt to be able to support yourself with your own work and income. And then to be openly promiscuous and getting mad Todds only see you as a prostitute and not a partner when that's all you present yourself as is just absurd. Like, when I was a pagan shrine priestess, I made it clear I only ever did those rituals as part of a fertility ritual and would never otherwise do them unless, unlike these delusional young vixens who merely do it for pleasure and self validation and no other reasons. And even if you didn't know the spiritual and psychological reasons why you shouldn't be promiscuous, the STDs and very visible negative effects should have been enough reason already. There's a reason I remained abstinent for so long, after no longer being a shrine priestess, until I could find a husband, which sadly I could not find one before I was beyond the age of having kids. And I also didn't join the church for centuries because of how unforgiving people were of what I had done, and wouldn't let go of my past life as a shrine priestess and treated me like I was an untouchable and irredeemable, regardless of how virtuous I became. I wouldn't blame me for not wanting to be a part of that. Honestly, I don't like going to church because they only seem to care about old people and married couples and rich donors while not caring about anyone else. I read the scriptures every day, and what I'm reading in the Gospels and what I'm on in church life just isn't adding up. So I just go for the sacraments because my soul needs them and leave without even visiting the other people. It doesn't even feel joyous, but more like an obligation. I hear you, Bonnie. That's why I have a lot more respect for sincere believers like my brother and chief executor Vixie Reddington and her husband, while seeing the fake Christians as worse than pagans. Because unlike pagans, those fake Christians have the scriptures and therefore have no excuse for profaning the name of Christ with their actions. I know people at my former parish community liked me, but I didn't feel personally close to them, and like I was just doing what I should be doing anyway. I don't even feel like I really have a vision for my life, but I'm just chasing after what seems promising for better things or how things should be. And the only things that seem consistent in these possibilities is virtue, because a properly ordered life is the only life that is stable and where satisfaction can be found. And because I know this, I don't cast judgment on all those kitsunes who either unalive themselves or destroy their lives with pleasure seeking when all they can see in their civilization as is so disordered beyond our recognition with no solutions that they simply cannot see the minuscule good that still exists in their society. And I know because I lived there for 800 years and saw the many eras it went through from the end of the Middle Ages to today. And when those young kits grew up with nothing to live for and are fated to merely be a means to an end and never be able to own anything of significance and no connection to the God that made them, what are they really left with except nihilism? And even if they did have a connection to the church from the 1800s to its death in the Kitsune clan at the end of the 20th century was so corrupt that it never even made an attempt to defend those in need, but aided in their oppression by gaslighting the poor congregations into believing that their earnings being stolen from them and having nothing to work towards was somehow a blessing from God. Why would I, as a person, ever worship a God like that, who claims to be just yet demands so much from the poor and punishes them while making excuses for the rich and the oppressors? If that was really who God is, and it isn't, then I would be an atheist like Finnegan, who used to be solely to gain some sense of autonomy and will to power, knowing such a God would just send me to hell anyway, making it so no good I would do would ever have any real value, therefore making any sacrifices only resulting in a loss. So I gained a much further love and respect for my brother when he actually remained faithful, when most of the church in the Kitsune clan was unfaithful, and was even excommunicated falsely because he refused to gaslight his spiritual children into believing things that weren't so, and actually took a stand against the evils of Kitsune society, despite failing to change it for the better. And only now, after almost 100 years, are the seeds of the church and the Kitsune clan being replanted and showing signs of growth, even if they're only three so far. So, no wonder you Kitsunes never turned away from your hedonistic ways for so long. You never had a real church to begin with. You would be right. It's another danger of a single story when those Tanukis try to portray us as degenerates and infidels in propaganda, when in reality we were deprived of a real church for centuries, and only had our old animistic pagan ways to fall back on when the neoliberal secularism ultimately destroyed itself. And if there's anything I learned from living through the secular age, when you don't have any ultimate purpose animating your society, it just dies. Because if there's no ultimate purpose or truth, what is the point of doing anything? And it's ironic, the people that pushed this secularism did so in the name of science and progress, for whatever that's supposed to mean. Because even great science itself doesn't have any meaning or value except for some purpose outside itself, like all methods for gaining knowledge. Like, what is this undefined idea of progress even supposed to mean? Progress towards what? I guess it really doesn't matter now with the modern and postmodern age behind us. But it's something I think about and feel like the modern and postmodern art and architecture being the most hideous creations ever to be made and called art. I swear, I honestly think that ugly art being traded for millions of dollars had to be part of a money laundering scheme. Because who in their right mind would buy something so hideous and grotesque and low effort for that much money? It's something so elementary that even my avaricious sister, who loves luxury and things people hold in high esteem to be in her possession, that she would not even accept such ugly works of anti-art into her presence even if she was paid to have them. This almost feels like the many times I would talk to my grandmother about the time she lived through when she was younger, even if it was the 2000s and not the medieval period. You've also shared a lot of wisdom over the years with me that you've gained over the centuries, so I guess you're one of the good ones. Maybe. I'm not really anything special, even if I might feel special to someone's subjective feelings. I'd say if you really want some deep wisdom beyond just the practical stuff you've learned from me and other people, talk to my brother. Although, if you want really deep wisdom from me, you'd probably have to be a Ninetales or a saint to truly understand it, because the kind of wisdom only people with a great deal of humility and purity of heart would be able to perceive. And without a pure heart and deep humility, it would probably sound incoherent until further thought and examination. I only know that because my brother shared some of that deep wisdom and understanding with me, but I was also only able to partially comprehend it while knowing at the same time it was true. Yet I was unwilling to act on this wisdom because I knew it to be true, because I didn't have the humility to face my own internal resentment towards my sister. And it's this lack of deep humility why I'm not in Eight Tails. Worldly wisdom and knowledge and magical power can get you your first seven tails, but won't get you the last two, which is why Eight Tails are so rare and Nine Tails almost non existent. So, for now, humility by living in what is true is what I need to work on before even thinking about having that ninth tail, with that requiring something even harder than humility, a pure heart, which is something upon self examination I don't have. And I know that because even though people see many of the things I do as good things and that I am a virtuous person, I know that in my own heart it is mixed with ulterior motives, such as wanting to be seen as a good person, with purely the good not being the sole end. It's much like my sister, who, although she has done many great things, and even very morally good things, as someone who knows her very intimately, she is heavily motivated by vanity and seeking the praise and approval of others as one of the highest goods. We're just fortunate she is vain rather than prideful, because vanity at least wants to be seen as good, whereas the prideful person cannot be helped at all. And perhaps that vanity can be turned against itself, with a desire to be seen as good into a desire to be seen as good by God, and then in a desire to be good herself. But if I am to say at least one good thing about my sister, she is diligent and has no sloth in her, and beat my sloth and lack of discipline out of me when I was young, which served me well over the years, even though I hated it, with her kind of overdoing it to the point of micromanaging my life. Sonny looked surprised. Wait, Inari actually has some good aspects? Zenko answered. Yes, and she's an example of why I don't believe people are totally depraved in a general sense. She's a person who wants genuinely good things, but has the priority of those good things disordered. Like, people recognizing the good things you do is not evil, but when recognition becomes the sole thing you live for, it becomes destructive. And talking to my brother has helped me ease the tension I have with my sister by a lot and gave me some insight into why she acts like that. Now, we both had a pretty emotionally neglectful mother, where our father was what I consider to be what a father ought to be, and a real parent, and how he cared about all three of us and wanted us to become good people first and foremost. It's also why he named me Zenko, as his desire was for me to become a virtuous, even if I'm not very successful with that in an absolute, objective sense. And sometimes I feel like my sister was overcompensating for my father after he died and when she was raising me in my adolescence. How come you don't talk about your mother much? It's because she was a terrible mother, and I don't like to remember the fact that she never cared about anything but her standing before other people and her legacy. She didn't even care about me or my sister beyond seeing us as a means to bring her glory through our accomplishments. I shed no tears when my mother died for her impurity, because even by the poor moral standards of Kitsune society, was she a terrible person, and a heretic of her own religion, according to the principles of the old cult of Inari from back in the day when my father raised me with, as one of its high priests. And almost all the openly evil things she did during her reign as image of Inari are recorded in the annals of the rulers of Kitsune society, with many of her hidden evil attributes only known in my own memory, and those who are close enough to see the real version of herself, like Sozan Yako and my brother. Yako, as in the Kitsune who martyred Saint Moshi the Blacktail? Yes, that same Yako. Although he's my sister's husband now, after being her right hand man for so long. He was always a good man who was a paragon of what the old Kitsune civilization valued in honor, sincerity, and purity. So it's ironic how he went from that into branding himself with the mark of Nogitsune as a mark of shame after he realized what he did in killing Moshi the Blacktail, falsely believing he was executing a true enemy of society and not the repentant saint he was. Normally, someone of the warrior caste would be punished for slaying the innocent by committing ritual suicide in order to prevent the cycle of vengeance from occurring. But because Yako had learned he killed a saint, the patriarch of the Yako tribe had him stripped of all ranks and titles, reduced to Nojitsune, and instead of being ordered to commit ritual suicide through seppuku, through disembowelment, he was reduced to being little more than Inari's slave, and made to suffer for the foreseeable remainder of his earthly life to atone for killing a saint. Damn, it almost sounds like Kitsune society is a good place to live if they're actually enforcing justice like that. I would rather say used to be a good place to live until about 200 years ago. That's when things got really bad, where people just left the country while they still could, with most of them resettling in Sosura, and the long economic depression that almost completely destroyed Kitsune society. That's the period where your brother's associate, Finnegan, comes from, and why he very much despises Kitsune society, with all he knew growing up being the fake churches actively supporting social sin, economic depression, open corruption, and the constant economic exploitation with no justice. It was truly one of the darkest ages of all Kitsune's history. The 20th century was truly the closest thing you could get to hell on earth for Kitsune civilization, if you weren't part of the aristocracy. And for all the problems American society has, I will gladly take the imperfections of American society over the hell on earth that the Kitsune kingdom has become. By the way, am I boring you with my family drama? No, I find it fascinating to learn more about you on a deeper level. I like talking to you and spending time with my closest lady friend. Sonny and Zenko and his little sister continued their road trip until eventually returning to Zenko to her house. Zenko then hugged Sonny before setting back as Sonny got settled inside Natalia's house. And when Sonny got into his new home, he walked in to see Sylvia cooking up a healthy meal for him and his little sister. She was dressed casually in her t-shirt and overalls, and after having taken a shower from her morning exercise routine. Sonny was intimidated at first, seeing her dragon-like features and being much taller and muscular than him, but was less scared of her, like most people, when she said to him, "Welcome home, Sonny. I made something for you and your sister, and now that you're home, sit down and eat, won't you?" Sonny did as he was asked, as Sylvia fixed him food she made that was quite hearty. After all, she enjoyed taking care of people, and Sonny and Bonnie were no exception. And even though it wasn't anything special and pretty plain, it was much better than the cheap and unhealthy food they were eating in college. But judging by her cooking, it seemed she saw food as merely a means of feeding her strong body rather than something for gluttonous pleasure, even though she could make such decadent food with the help of Edenthiel's cooking lessons. After all, Sylvia's husband did work at Edenthiel's bakery as a part-time job for some extra income, in addition to his normal job at Bootleg Brewery. Then Sonny saw the ring on the finger of Sylvia's big left hand and asked, "Did you recently get married?" Sylvia answered, "Yes, to the love of my life. We've known each other for years and got married now that we have everything stabilized. We're just waiting for your brother and soon-to-be sister-in-law to come home before we buy our house, knowing it costs next to nothing to live here. Plus, Natalia has tasked me and my husband with taking care of the place while she's away." Sonny and Bonnie finished their meals before Sylvia took their plates away, and although Sonny was still intimidated by Sylvia's appearance, he felt a little more relieved knowing she was a gentle giant. There was also the comfort knowing that Dragonborn were generally good people and were known for being good company. So Sonny felt good knowing he was staying with Agron and Sylvia, rather than other creatures, and that they evenly split chores sharing the house. And Sonny felt the need as long as he lived in Natalia's house. He may as well help take care of the place and appreciate that sharing duties with Agron and Sylvia made taking care of the house pretty easy and a cozy and clean home to come home to. And now that Sonny and Bonnie were settled in, Sonny started doing job applications to get hired and start paying off his debt. And at the same time, he wanted to save up to take Zenko on a second date.